I'll investigate the West Pole, even though it's nowhere near the middle of the West, but alright. Is it in the middle of the map exactly? Ishiyaka wants to be further east than it is. Ishiyaka is training against its own roots. Hey, partner, this place feels kinda weird. I think I heard of this place, the West Pole. It's got something to do with the Earth's magnetic field. What does that mean? Well, physics ain't exactly my wheelhouse, but it is mine. Now, you see, this makes no sense, because magnetically, well, how would you have a West Pole? If there's a North Pole and a South Pole, well, then the electrons are traveling in a straight line from the north to the south. And in theory, it should be isometric with respect to the axial radius. The axial radius? It should be isometric in radially. Radially isometric. There we go. Meaning that in all cardinal directions of east and west, all the way through the circumference, it should be exactly the same. A west pole would suggest that either there are two magnets, which doesn't make sense because the poles are referring to the planetary alignment, and I don't think there's two planets welded together. Or it would suggest that the electrons are taking a path that, rather than the path of least resistance, the shortest path, it's basically going to a spot somewhere in the west, and then that spot is both absorbed, and then there's an east pole, and one of them is either absorbing and one is emitting. But that doesn't make any sense, because then the north pole would be receiving electrons from one of them and sending to the other, and that doesn't work. If it were to be the case that there was a west and an east pole, let's just say for the sake of it that east is an emitter, is a positive pole. Well, then in between the north and the east poles, there would be basically just magnetic flux, because the electrons wouldn't be going in that direction. They would be attracted to the other side much more strongly. Basically meaning that there would be a section of the planet where compasses just don't work. And the consequences of that would basically be a magnetic catastrophe. Also, it would mean that there's a section of the planet that doesn't have a functioning magnetosphere, and that would mean that every time during certain seasons, that area would be scorched sterile by the sun. Because it would have basically zero defense against the solar winds that constantly are hitting our planet. Instead of an aurora borealis, it would basically have a cancer beam. Just blaring you in the face all day, every day. So there would be an area of the planet that is just burned sterile by the sun, because there's no magnetosphere around it. Which is not the best. So, probably not magnetically. Also, even if it was an extremely strong magnetic field, most organic molecules are paramagnetic, meaning they really reject magnetic fields and don't really align with them at all. And sometimes, or they could be diamagnetic, where they basically ignore magnetic fields. And that's why if you hold a magnet up to your brain, it does basically nothing. It's why you can go into an MRI machine, which is basically using superconductors to create an incredibly powerful magnetic field, right? Like many dozens of Tesla in strength, right? Which, like, 1 Tesla would be way stronger than any magnet you have ever experienced or seen. And I mean including, like, neodymium magnets and the kind of stuff that could break your hands. That's right. You can go inside an MRI machine and nothing will happen to you. And it's a strong enough magnetic field that they can see, like, how different molecules in your brain react and get a picture of the inside of your brain, right? And it still does nothing to your body, right? Organic molecules really don't respond to magnetic fields at all. The idea that these plants would be bending towards the pole means that what is more likely is that there's a north and south pole that are magnetic, like normal, but the east and west poles are gravitational. Meaning that the gravity for some reason, is focused on these points, which doesn't make any sense, but we also don't understand gravity very well, so I don't know, maybe. But that would also suggest that there's an east pole somewhere that is basically has negative gravity, and everything is being pushed away from it, which also doesn't make any sense. So,